wgsd.net, and you can find a link to sign up. And you know what? It is free.
We always talk about the women's self-defense class, and we've actually had several people on the program that have taken part in it. I know the next one, it looks like it's tomorrow.
And welcome back to Richland Radio, the news program connecting the community to the programs and services of the Richland County Sheriff's Department. We are live on WGCV 620 AM, 96.3 FM, and you can also listen to us streaming live on WGCV.net.
We're in the studio today talking about mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's a critically important topic because there's so many things that go on with people day to day, and oftentimes they don't know where to turn for help. So 733-5620, we're in the studio with Senior Investigator Cassie Radford and Licensed Professional Counselor Associate Kelly Norwood. And we'll be taking your questions if you have any questions about mental illness. Talk about the whole health. You said something when we were prepping to come on the air about your whole health.
So holistic health, when you think about that, I mean, that's your physical, your spiritual, your mental, emotional health. And so when we think about health, generally people think, your fitness level, do you drink enough water? And those are really critical, obviously, because you have a body, but you're not just a body. You're a body with a mind, with emotions, with a soul. And so we want to make sure that when you are considering total health and wellness, that is a component, your mental health, your emotional health. And so part of wellness in general is making sure that you're paying attention to all those parts of yourself. And often mental health gets pushed off to the side like it's a negative thing, like, oh, well, if you need to treat your mental health, then there's something wrong with it, but not necessarily. Right. I mean, in mental health is just that. It's literally your mind being healthy and well. And there are so many different situations in life that really challenge that, right? Just normal stressors. I mean, absolutely. Parents with young kids, job transitions, just all types of life challenges.
I was going to say, I can throw a couple more in there if you want.
Yeah.
Paying bills.
Teenagers, I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, life's not easy.
No,
it's hard. And all these things compound over time if you don't address them in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. And they manifest themselves in unhealthy ways. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And we had talked outside about what the stigma is, right? And I think that's some of the information I think it's important that we talk about. It's okay to need counseling. It's
right.
okay to go out and speak to somebody.
Right.
If you are having a difficult time, with even like anxiety or depression and stress and all of that compounded. So is that part of what the resources that are available at your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not born with the innate skills to just be amazing, we're not. No, right? It's wow, shocking. Like life is not hard, and we're not always given the right skills that we need to do well. And that's nothing on our parents or our culture even. It's just the fact of life that we are not always raised or given or trained with the things that are the most helpful. Sometimes we're given really maladaptive skills, and in therapy we call those coping skills, your ability to really cope with things that are difficult. And so if you've got not helpful coping skills, then life's not going to get easier, it's just going to get more difficult. But if you can learn how to add in some really helpful coping skills, then you're going to have a toolbox to handle life's difficulties, and you don't have to have a mental illness to gain those coping skills. And so in mental health in general, we want to teach people that the stigma is there because people associate like these, this broad spectrum of what health or illness looks like. And in reality, it was all just normal people trying to get through their day. And some have different challenges than others. And so sometimes a professional is able to say, well, here are some ways that you can get through your specific challenge, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So I have a pretty pointed question. At what point should you go seek help, like the help of a professional? Or at what point, if you see somebody struggling, should you suggest they go seek the help of a professional?
Sure. I think it depends on the person. So in mental health, we typically say if it starts to affect your daily functioning, then absolutely get some help before things just get really rough, right? Like don't ask for help when you're just too far gone where you don't even have any hope at that point. Now, obviously, there are resources for that, and we do that every single day. We bring hope back into people's lives. But preventative-wise, before it even gets to that point, why not take that extra investment in yourself? I mean, there's such a broad range of what counseling and therapy in general can treat. Career difficulties, if you're confused, if you're just having identity issues in terms of who do I want to be and what do I want to do with my life? Those are types of things that you can really work through in a counseling session because it's totally focused on you, your needs, your goals, and teasing out the nuances of what does life look like for you and how do you want to get it to where you want to get it.
And I think it's so important for people to understand that, especially, we live in this social media life right now where you look at Facebook and you think everybody's life is put together and what's that expectation for your own life to look like. And I think there's so many people that pretend, that their life is okay.
Oh, for sure.
And it's hard for them to really come to terms that I need help.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the research has shown that social media in general increases rates of depression and anxiety because it's such a comparison-focused media source. And so nobody's posting their lowlights, they're posting their highlights. And so you're looking at somebody else's highlight and you're like, well, I didn't go to Bali last week, so I must be really struggling here in my life. But in reality, like that person that's the first vacation they've taken.
I must be struggling.
Yes.
So I think it's just completely dependent upon what resources people are willing to seek out. And at that point, anything's helpful.
So help can pretty much come from anywhere. And one of the things we talk about at the Sheriff's Department, we've actually done a lot more talking about since we had an officer die by suicide within the last 3 or 4 years. How long was Fish? It was
2016, I believe.
Yeah, so it's been, within
Going
the
on
last 3 years.
Right.
So we really focus a lot more on destigmatizing and making sure that if you feel like you need help, you have a safe place to ask for help. So, and particularly in law enforcement, it's incredibly difficult for a type A personality that gets into law enforcement to go, I might need help.
Yeah.
So what, aside from the obvious, try to create an environment where you have two-way conversation where it's safe. What other things can even employers do? Because, most people spend most of their lives at work, right? You're not home more than you're at work. You wouldn't be able to pay your bills. So you spend a lot more time with your coworkers who probably know you as well as or better than some of your own family because you see them more. So what can we do as coworkers to provide that kind of comfortable environment or an environment more conducive for people to ask for help?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. She's a leading national or New York Times bestseller, and she has a special on Netflix right now. I highly recommend it. She's a researcher on shame, and she does a lot of leadership with companies and corporate offices on how do we create environments where people are allowed to just be who they are, right? Then you've got law enforcement, first responders. My husband is active duty Army. These are the types of environments where weakness is really not an option if you want to succeed in your work environment. And so it's that tension between yes, we want to help people in their struggles, but then also this is not an environment where that's okay. And it's a hard balance, right? But at the same time, the resources are there, and therapy in general is a confidential setting. Nobody, as a therapist, you won't know a single one of my clients. You will never know a single one of my clients. And so you can go into a setting where you have none of your titles, none of your restrictions. It's just that space is for you. As a coworker, I would say be engaged with that person. If they're struggling, just say, hey, I can tell that something's been going on with you. I want you to know I noticed and it's okay. And hey, if you need something, I'm here. It doesn't have to be this really deep, oh, what's wrong with you? Do you need to take some time off?
Absolutely.
Something's going on,
Yes.
It can just be a kindness thing of hey, I can tell you've been a little bit off, and if you need some resources, I've got some. Or if you need somebody to talk to, I'm willing to listen. And then actually listen, right? Actually follow through and say, hey, that coffee I recommended us to go get, I really would love to get lunch with you and kind of hear what's going on. And so it allows us to expand our own horizons, and it increases gratitude. There's all these positives for us when we reach out to people who are in need, and it makes us feel a little bit better. It might even help us recognize oh, I don't have it so bad, or even wow, they're going through something that I went through a couple years ago, and maybe I can encourage them in ways that nobody was there to encourage me. So it doesn't have to be this super deep sappy thing. It can just be hey, I see you. Right?
Exactly.
And it's okay.
Totally agree.
And it's okay.
And I want to add to that, though. I think there's something that to be said for the follow-up. A lot of people do the superficial, if you need me, give me a call.
Right.
Right? So, and they don't really mean it. So you've got to actually follow through, and especially as a supervisor. And you said her name's Brene Brown, right?
Yes.
Okay, my wife and I watched. I caught my wife watched the whole thing, but I watched like the last 30 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And the Netflix special is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was really, really good stuff. But the significance of the actual follow through and meaning it. Don't just say things to say it.
To say it.
Right.
To make because really you're not saying it because you mean it. You're saying it because you're making yourself feel better.
Sure.
And the follow up is where you actually show that you're a decent human being.
But that creates kindness and compassion in us.
Right.
And so we're both benefiting from this interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when you're not sincere, your coworkers know that.
Right.
I mean, that's not something that you can just hide. People know when you're being sincere and when you're not being sincere. And transparency and trust is an extremely important component to that. If your coworkers trust you and you've been transparent with them, then they're more likely to come to you if they need something, and then you can direct them in other places.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that just goes back, if you listen to us on a regular basis, the first Friday of every month, we talk about leadership, and one of the main things that we always relay back to is that trust, establishing that trust, with your employees, and making sure that they can and they feel that they can come to you.
Right.
So, absolutely.
I'm bummed we haven't had anybody call. This is great conversation and no one's contributing to it from the outside the room. Maybe they will though. 733-5620.
You got 15 minutes.
Right.
You got 15 minutes to call. We want to hear your thoughts on mental health, and if you've got a story that you think would contribute, we'd love to hear. So stay with us here at WGCV 620 AM, 96.3 FM, and streaming live on WGCV.net. We'll be right back after this short break.
Kelly.
So we were talking about creating an environment that was conducive for people being able to come in and ask for help when they need it. Do you think we do enough of that?
In general?
Yes.
No, I think our culture in general is a shame-based culture. And what I mean by that is, for some reason, whatever, we are okay with watching people mess up and fail. I don't know if it's just in our innate nature. We maybe feel better about ourselves when other people are doing badly. And that's not everybody. I'm not trying to make everybody sound like a terrible person. But in general, our culture is not one that's like super uplifting and like, everybody is really encouraged. It's typically one that's very comparison-based, very shame-based. Like, you're not enough, basically, the way you are. So buy this and look like this and act like this and have this degree, and then you're worthy, right? And so at the root of it, if we had a culture like that, if we in general were able to look at each other and say, you know what, you're enough just as you are. You are worthy of love and belonging and acceptance and kindness. Then it would be a little bit easier, right?
Kindness.
Very much so.
We really seem at times like we stray so far from that. Mm-hmm. And you would think that social media would have the exact opposite effect. You would think that, well, now I'm seeing so many great things, right? Because like you said earlier, we only run the highlight reel. We don't put the low light. You would think people would just generally be nicer.
Yes.
And they're not.
But they're not. Yeah, I think that's something that we've gotten away from. Even as little kids, is why aren't we encouraging so much we're like, be kind, like not smile, but be kind.
But we don't always model that to them, right?
Exactly.
Like, we get short-tempered and we're having a rough day and we haven't slept in 3 days, and this goes back to that holistic thing. If we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we be nice, right? That takes a really special person to, like, not have slept in 3 days and
still be nice.
And still be nice, right? That's really hard for me.
Right.
So it's something where we have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of other people, and to be able to see you and be okay with whatever is going on with you and not feel triggered myself because I've taken care of myself.
Right.
Right?
And that's why I keep chocolate around.
Yeah.
Chocolate
exactly.
makes me happy that way.